right, let's talk some Penn State, Michigan. They will be playing. I don't know if signs will be stolen or have been stolen or are being changed so that they can't be stolen or are different from the ones that were stolen. If you're right there with me, we got Marty Leap here from Penn State Rivals to break down the Nittany Lions. Marty, what's going on tonight?
Not too much, Mark. How about you?
I'm doing just fine. This is the second of three clashes between the Mighty Three there in the Big Ten Eastern Division. So Penn State falls in Columbus. They get their next go at it against a Michigan team. And I guess we should feel better about Penn State's chances considering what they did at Maryland, although the Terps not as good as we thought they were. Your interpretation of 51-15 and what that meant.
To me, the biggest positive is I get what you're saying. Like, obviously, Maryland is Maryland. No knock on them. They're not as good as a lot of people, myself included, thought they were going to be earlier in the year. But the biggest positive was for the first time really all year, you saw them with some consistency trying to push the ball down the field. You saw Drew ALLAR not look hesitant. You saw him come out and just kind of grip it and rip it. You know, he showed off that arm talent. He showed why he was a 5-star recruit, why some places had him as number one quarterback in the country in high school. He made throws. There were multiple throws he made on a Saturday that honestly half the quarterbacks in the NFL probably can't make. So we saw it, and to see it in game action, especially on the road where he has really struggled this year, that is undoubtedly a big positive no matter what kind of spin you want to put on him with the opponent. Because I get it. It was just Maryland. And, you know, I said this after the game. I know Penn State has scored 63 points twice this year. But when you consider the opponent, consider it was on the road, that was by far the best offensive performance of the year. It was the best game Katron Allen has had running the ball. Also, we finally saw Dante Cephas, the coveted wide receiver transfer from Kent State, step up and have a huge game, made two really good catches in the end zone for touchdowns on two really good throws by Drew. He also had a great game blocking with his route running. We kind of joked, my cohorts and I at Happy Valley Insider, whenever Drew threw that interception against Indiana and then led them right down the field to score to win, like, hey, you know what? Maybe now that he's finally thrown an interception, he won't be as careful and is concerned with turnovers. And maybe there's some truth to it because ever since that interception, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but the Maryland game combined with that last drive against Indiana, he has something like 30 for 40 for, I think, almost 300 yards, 5 scores. So there might be something too that once he threw that interception and that he felt the pressure of not having any turnovers where he can just kind of, just grip it and rip it and let the arm talent talk for itself.
And it's kind of strange because that interception, if Tom Allen and Indiana would have taken better advantage of it, because I certainly didn't understand, nor did I agree with the play calling once they did. When you're in Happy Valley as a 32-point underdog, you've just picked off Drew ALLAR for the first time that he's thrown a pass interception in his career after setting a record, and you've got the ball in the red zone or the lip of the red zone, and you can go up by 4 with a touchdown and put ALLAR in a situation where he's got to drive it in the final 2 minutes for a touchdown. You got to try to score a touchdown. But anyway, that was 2 weeks ago against, and then he bounces back, obviously, after even after throwing the pick, then the field goal to tie the game. He goes for the gusto down the right sideline and throws a nice ball to win the game. That my point about the interception was going to be, well, if it's a first quarter interception and he gets it out of the way in that manner, I would believe, that could be shrugged off. But I guess regardless, he bounced back with a nice effort, no question, against Maryland. When you bring up Katron Allen, and I'll throw Nick Singleton into the mix, has Allen taken over as not the number one back, but a more of a primary role?
I think so. Allen this year is averaging nearly 5 yards per carry. Last week against Maryland, averaged almost 7 yards per carry, finished with like 92, 93 yards, which had he gotten there would have been the first 100-yard game of the season for a Penn State back. Singleton still leads the team in touchdowns, but only averaging 4 yards per carry. Now, Singleton has been more of a threat catching the ball out of the backfield this year than Allen. But the explosiveness, which is what Nicholas Singleton is known for, hasn't been there. Now, I will say each of the last 2 weeks, he's returned to kickoff 50 plus yards. Singleton has, so maybe something is starting to click there again. But there's just been multiple times this year where there's been holes that last year Singleton hits that and bursts through it for 10, 20, 30 yards, if not more. And this year he's getting shoestring tackled. Something just seems off with him. I don't know what it is. But hopefully whatever it is, they get it addressed, if not sooner, at least during this offseason. But I definitely think the offense moves better right now with Kaytron Allen on the field. And you look ahead to Saturday's game, if you're going to pull the upset, it's a game where you need to maximize every opportunity in offense. You need to maximize your possessions, maximize your yardage. And I feel like Kaytron Allen gives you a better chance of that right now than Nicholas Singleton does. So I suspect we'll still see plenty of both on Saturday, but I would expect Allen to get more reps than Singleton, especially if this is a game where, you can get into the fourth quarter and Penn State's, within a score or tied or leading. I think you really lean on Allen in to try and, help drain the clock and put it away.
Our guy in the chat, David, says that Penn State never beats anyone ranked in the top 25. So I did this count a couple weeks ago. That would be 13 games that James Franklin has won against top 25 opponents. So 13-0, that's a pretty close estimation there, David. Nice job. So, it's obviously a storyline that they don't beat the very best teams on the schedule and have had issues with that. But, yes, ranked teams, yes, they've done rather fine. And if you look at the bowl record, all ranked teams, usually in the top 10, those have been pretty good showings for Penn State. Good bowl record, Rose Bowls, BCS Bowls, New Year's Six Bowls, the whole deal. Marty, when we look at this defense, and I'm going to let you know, I saw almost every play of the Indiana game. I did not touch the Maryland game. I watched like the 8-minute highlight deal. They didn't really get shredded against Indiana in a sense from play to play, but it was those big shots that really hurt them and kept the Hoosiers in the game. What was going on there with an airtight Penn State defense that was giving up those kind of bombs?
It was mostly 2 plays. Indiana got 159 yards on 2 plays. On one, it was a miscommunication between Johnny Dixon and KJ Winston. One of them was supposed to blitz. One of them was supposed to go into coverage. They both blitzed, left a wide receiver wide open. Jalen Reed noticed it, but by the time Reed noticed it, he didn't have the angle to get there to make up for it. And then the other one was Zakee Wheatley bit on a pump fake, and then 2 or 3 guys missed tackles. So I don't think it was anything super concerning. Outside of those 2 plays, Indiana had like 170 yards of offense. Now, obviously, you can't take those plays away, and you're lucky it was Indiana, a team who can't get out of their own way and couldn't really take advantage of your 2 defensive mishaps there. But even in the Indiana game, when the defense had to come through, they did. When Indiana picked off Drew ALLAR, the defense held them to a field goal. When Penn State took the lead back, literally the very next play, there's a strip sack that results in a safety that effectively ended the game. So it was mostly just 2 really bad plays, one of which was a miscommunication. The other one saw a young defensive back bite on a pump fake combined with some poor tackling. So nothing super alarming to me. Against Maryland, a lot of people want to point out Talia Tagovailoa starting 17 of 17, but it's because Maryland was just content running 4 or 5 yard patterns and Penn State was tackling them right there. So Penn State was content giving them those because half the time on 3rd down, they would wind up getting a sack or a TFL and Maryland start the punt anyway. So the defense played extremely well. The mishaps against Indiana, I think, were just 2 fluky things and nothing that really raised a red flag to me.
I like strange, weird, odd stats. And Maryland rushing for a -49, I think was the number.
-49 is what it finished at.
-49. And if you know the way stats are compiled, folks, of course, they include sacks. But they basically didn't even try to run the ball. Like that was like a ton of sack yardage.
Yeah, I was going to say, even without the sack yardage, just like regular running, they still had negative yards rushing, even if you took out sack yardage.
Yeah. Roman Hemby ran for 1,000 yards last year. He was like 5 carries for 0.
Yeah.
And the best figure in the Big Ten this century in terms of rush defense, -49 against Maryland. We got Marty Leap here from Penn State Rivals. I want to keep Marty along here for the ride. I don't know how much time you have, just long enough. We got Tanner Wooten from Blue by 90. I wanted to hear you guys mix it up a little bit and go back and forth on the Michigan game. it's been noted here in the chat, and we did a Michigan live stream this morning, and a lot of people upset about the noon kickoff. So obviously, there's not the impact from the crowd, from the setting, from all of that there is. I would be one to say, if I didn't hear the feedback, I would say, what's the difference? But we know that there's a difference because there are enough people that talk about it, whether they be coaches and players or fans themselves, to say there's a difference. So, but it is what it is, and Fox owns the Big Ten, and they put the biggest games at noon. So this has been going on for 5 years, folks. Like, I hear people talk about it like this is a new thing, like what's going on. This game's at noon. Yeah, this has been going on with the Big Ten and Fox since like 2017. So this is a 7th season of this. But just your thoughts about starting at noon and what kind of home field advantage can be summoned up at that point.
Yeah, that's where I dislike it is, as a Penn State fan, everyone has seen the whiteout. Everyone has seen night games here. They know what it's like. You would much rather be able to get in Michigan, Ohio State last year at night with that crowd, with the whiteout. That said, I mean, the noon kickoffs at Penn State have still been some really good crowds. I mean, last year they took Ohio State to the wire until JTT took that game over in the closing minutes in a big noon kickoff, and the crowd was raucous for that. The crowd Saturday was going to be lit regardless, but just with everything else going on right now, this is the first time Michigan's played on the road since all of this has started and happened. I think that place is going to be one of the best atmospheres you've seen at Beaver Stadium in quite a while, even with the noon kick. Now, personally, for just a fan standpoint, I like it because usually the noon window, this is the only like good game is big noon kickoff. So when Penn State plays in big noon kickoff, I like it because then I know usually in the 3:30 or the 7:30 window when the games are better, I don't have to be sitting there like, oh man, there's 3 games I want to watch, but Penn State's on right now. Last week, for example, that 3:30 window had quite a few games I was super interested in, but Penn State, Maryland were also playing in the 3:30 window. So from that standpoint, I like it because it's nice to kind of have your team as that standalone one good game of the window where you're not concerned with trying to watch other games quite as much. But I will say from a home field advantage standpoint, I definitely think the night game, I mean, you can ask Jim Harbaugh. He's never won. He's coached twice at Penn State in night games, and I think the final score combined in those games was something like 72-28. Like Penn State has come out and taken it to Michigan when they've gotten them under the lights. I mean, you can go back to Bill O'Brien, that triple overtime win in the whiteout. It makes a difference. It really does. I think Penn State now, after beating Iowa this year, has won something like 7 of the last 9 primetime whiteouts. It does make a big difference, but I still think I expect that crowd to be very loud, very raucous on Saturday, and for it to be a great home field advantage.
Marty, what do you make of this Michigan scandal? And I don't know how closely you're following it, but even from the standpoint of how much do you think can be gained or is gained? And that doesn't, in my mind, excuse cheating. If it's that much, it's that much. But just in regards to what impact this is having on the other teams and Penn State. I don't know if James Franklin, I'm sure he's been asked about it. I don't know how much he's really responded in truth about his personal feelings about it, but your thoughts.
Yeah, well, James was asked about it today's press conference. He gave the answer you would expect. Oh, hey, we're not going to worry about that. We're not going to talk about that. We're focused on our game plan, yada, yada, what you would expect. But to me, it's a complex thing because sign stealing happens. There's no doubt about it. It doesn't matter I coach Pony League baseball, and if we have a chance to try and steal the other team's signs, we're going to do it. It gives you an advantage. But to this extent, I think that's where it becomes that gray area. That's where it becomes what's causing where you see so many Big Ten coaches angry is to go to the extents that they did. And I definitely, to me, you can't deny it gave them an advantage. If you look last year, some of the clips and things that have been released where you can see Stallions on the sideline very clearly mouthing, hey, run right, run left, whatever it is, to Jesse Minter, and then the defense just absolutely stuffs the play. That's an advantage. I remember when this first broke 2 weeks ago, James Franklin made a comment. This is the only really comment he's made on it, where in the 2021 game where Penn State had the ball with like 40 seconds left, down by 4 and a 4th and 1, and Penn State ran a play action and Michigan covered it beautifully. And I remember Franklin saying, like, he and Mike Yursich were just amazed that on 4th and 1 in that situation, Michigan knew to run the coverage that they did and not sell out to stop. That's why they called the pass plays. They figured Michigan would be selling out to stop the run. So just little things like that where the advantage clearly is there. You know, you look at the Fiesta Bowl last year where, truth or not, it seems to be enough smoke that TCU was tipped that this may have been going on and changed their signs, and look how that game went. You know, so I definitely think it gave them a big advantage. I will say, if it is to the extent that it seems, I think that Jim Harbaugh's days in Michigan are probably numbered. Even coming into the year, I thought after all the recruiting stuff and the burger incident, which to me that was stupid on the NCAA's part. Like, if you want to buy a kid a dinner on a recruiting visit, you should be allowed to. I felt after all of that, Harbaugh was not going to be at Michigan next year anyway. But I definitely think now I don't expect him back. And, you know, if something happens between now and kickoff on Saturday where Jim Harbaugh isn't coaching on Saturday, it's not going to stun me either, because I do think the Big Ten would love to step in and, if nothing else, suspend Harbaugh, which I think would be the right move. I don't think, you know, they would be in the wrong for doing that. It's not going to surprise me. But yeah, I think, like I said, stealing signs happens in sports. It's unavoidable, but to do it to the extent Michigan did, that's where it becomes a problem, in my opinion. Just I mean, it's right in the bylaws. You can't do the in-person scouting ahead of time. That is illegal, and it's pretty clear that was going on to some extent. But yeah, it's definitely a sticky situation, and you know, it's made even harder by the fact it's a team that has won the Big Ten 2 years in a row, gone to the college football playoff 2 years in a row, and is in position to do the same. Because I think you'd agree with me, if this wasn't one of those 3 teams currently ranked in the top 10, the Big Ten probably would have hammered them by now. But TV and money and viewership, when your 3 cash cows are what they are, when those 3 screw up, it doesn't matter what conference you are. If your cash cows do something, you're going to give them more leeway. And I think we're like, if this was like Wisconsin or something, I think they would have been hammered already by the Big Ten, but that's kind of beside the point. Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head there with the lack of institutional control, where even if Harbaugh truly did not know about this somehow, which I find extremely hard to believe, even if he didn't, you know, when you're the CEO, when you're the boss, when you're in charge, it falls at your feet. You know, I'm a teacher. If something happens in my classroom, even if I don't see it, I don't hear it, hey, that still falls at my feet. I'm in charge. I'm in control. And it's the same way with the head football coach of a football program. You know, if something happens, whether you know about it or not, you're supposed to be in control. That falls at your feet. You should be held responsible.
We got Marty Leap here from Penn State Rivals, breaking down Penn State, Michigan, of course, one of the big matchups in the Big Ten. Every season, they get together in Happy Valley at noon Eastern time. Certainly, Marty, if you need to move on, we had scheduled a Michigan guy just a few minutes after you to hopefully get you guys together after we got the Penn State take from you.
I still got about 15 minutes or so. Do I need to do anything else? So I can hang out.
What happens?
Yeah.
Cool. So join Marty, Penn State Rivals, and you can check out his work right there. Is this much of a recruiting factor, this game?
I think the game itself is a big recruiting factor because it's going to be a big recruiting weekend. Obviously, when Michigan comes to town, you're going to have a big recruiting crowd, just like, you know, if there's going to be in Ann Arbor, it'd be a big recruiting game for Michigan. On an individual basis, I don't know. I mean, I think if Drew ALLAR can come out and play the way he did against Maryland, against Michigan, that's definitely something you can use with recruiting quarterbacks in the future. Now, on more of a macro level, if you win this game, you put yourself in a position to still potentially make the Big Ten championship or the college football playoff, which obviously doing that is a big recruiting boost. But I mean, I think it would be different if it was Ohio State, because I mean, James Franklin has beaten Michigan a lot more frequently than he has Ohio State. But I think on a macro level, this can set you up for more recruiting success, because winning this game could potentially get you to Indianapolis, could potentially get you to the college football playoff.